our goal sometimes is to minimize our income tax. And so this is where you really have to bring in some expertise to do an accrual adjustment. In other words, uh, you look at the different balance sheets and income statements, make adjustments for, inventory like grain inventory or livestock inventory, et cetera, to really get a true profitability and a true profitability over 3 5-year period. Because as well as I do, you're going to have certain non-reoccurring income, or you have those very, very good years, or you have those very, very tough years. And so basing some of your economic assessment for that future off what I call an accrual profitability analysis, very, very critical. One of the things, Elaine, I'm going to be candid, it's very, very difficult to buy land at the prices we have today, at the commodity prices that we have today. And so this allows you to build up some of that equity. And then in your late 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, that's the power zone of buying land. You've seen it in your generation, my generation. Sometimes we want to do it when we're in our 20s and 30s. And one of the things is when you're buying land, it's for the decades.
Yes, it's
Not
long term.
unless you're flipping it, which most farmers are not, and ranchers aren't flipping it. And so it's a decade-long commitment.
Welcome to the Farm Family Harmony podcast. I'm Elaine Fraze, Farm Family Coach, here with another episode full of transition tips, tactics, and sometimes hard truths to get harmony on your farm. Hi there, folks. Welcome to the Farm Family Harmony podcast. And it's my joy and delight today to introduce you to my longtime friend, Dr. David Kohl. And Dr. Kohl and I have crossed paths many times at different ag conferences across the US and some in Canada. And my intent today, Dr. Kohl, is because of your longstanding expertise in economics and especially farm business management, I've called this podcast Financial Wisdom for Young Farmers. So it's now 2025. You've been out haying at your dairy farm. And so just tell folks a little bit about you if they haven't met you yet before.
Well, one of the things that I do, I was a professor here at Virginia Tech for a number of years, taught here at Virginia Tech and up at Cornell, over 10,000 students. Matter of fact, we just had alumni, and it was great to see many of them back. And I do quite a little bit of travel. So far this year, I've been in 22 states and done a couple of things in Canada as well. And we have a beef cow calf operation, and we're making hay. We sell hay to horse folks and also to beef owners. And then we have a dairy creamery. Just hit 25 years in business. So
congratulations. Your anniversary.
Yeah, and we sell our milk in the old-fashioned glass bottle, and we're in 18 states now. And where we started out at about 650,000 in revenue, now we're north of 15 million. And
wow, that's great.
And I'm transitioning out of that business. It was tough. It was
so maybe we should do another podcast on letting go as the founder.
Yeah. Let's put it this way. It's difficult to give up control, particularly where you're involved in building a business, but we've done it and it's in good hands, but I'm still there. I did a presentation last night for one of the city groups. They wanted to hear about our creamery. So that's a lot about me. And
yeah, and I every time that brings back good childhood memories for me too, because when I was a little girl growing up on my farm, eldest of 5 kids, my dad would take me to the dairy, Silverwoods Dairy in downtown Winnipeg. And for 10 cents a bottle back in the 60s, my treat, Dr. Kohl, was to have a little glass bottle of chocolate milk with the cardboard snap on the top. So yeah, that brings back great memories for me.
Last night, they said their favorite product is our chocolate milk in the glass bottle.
Yeah, there you go, right? So you got a good seller there. You got a good thing going. So we are in a new era, maybe not new. You've seen many things before because you've been doing economics for a very long time, and I've been coaching for a very long time. So when you and I were together at the side by side conference sponsored, I think by Farm Credit back in Omaha a while back, you were talking about rules for business transition growth. And I'm very focused now on helping farm families, founders, and successors get their transition act together. So, what are some of the main sort of points that you'd like to get across of what you see now, David? Because I remember speaking in Iowa last year to the Young Farmers Conference for the Farm Bureau in Iowa, and 500 young farmers, many of them in tears, because they're just so frustrated with how to navigate this path of what is the right way, or what are the opportunities and the risks to get going forward and to get into the business on a healthy way.
Well, Elaine, you bring up a very important point. And one of the things is it's transition. It takes a couple of years,
Mhm.
2 or 3 years, and it's actually transformative as well. And, down 21% of farms and ranches don't have any next gen coming on. And so
No
my
successes.
uh, enjoyments now is matching up people that want to carry on their legacy, but they have to do it through a non-farm family member.
Non-related.
Yeah. And actually, that works better because we really focus on the process and the business components, and we take the emotion uh, out of the family issues that are out there that you and I have seen over the years. I
Mhm.
think one of the things that's very, very important if you're going back into a family business is, first of all, do a resource assessment. In other words, what I'm saying is you have to look at the land, the facilities, the equipment, machinery, and if it's livestock, the quantity and the quality of livestock. And one of the kiss of death is when we go back into a family business expected to carry that legacy on. You got a bunch of rust out, worn out, and faded out assets, and it actually sets the younger generation back a step. And they won't notice it initially, Elaine, but then 2 or 3 years in, oh, we've got to replace this, we got to replace that, and then that can be overwhelming. One of the things I often suggest is to have a neutral evaluator come in because that old John Deere 720
Mhm.
40, I'll say 4020 has a much more legacy value sometimes to the
I
C.
think that was my husband's first tractor, by the way.
Oh, well, it's my favorite tractor, okay? And
Okay.
and the thing is, sometimes we have to have that neutrality in there to put a value in, and then just do that type of assessment. So,
So
step
know
number
what you're getting
one,
into.
I would suggest, is to do that assessment. Step number two, has the business been profitable?
Oh, there's a good idea.
Yeah. And here's the whole thing. You know as well as I do, whether it's Uncle Sam here in the United States or Revenue Canada up in Canada, our goal sometimes is to minimize our income tax. And so this is where you really have to bring in some expertise to do an accrual adjustment. In other
Mhm.
words, uh, you look at the different balance sheets and income statements, make adjustments for, inventory like grain inventory or livestock inventory, etc., to really get the true profitability and a true profitability over 3 5 year period. Because as well as I do, you're going to have certain non-reoccurring income, or you have those very, very good years, or you have those very, very tough years. And so
Mhm.
basing some of your economic assessment for that future off a what I call a accrual profitability analysis, very, very critical.
Yeah.
And
So sorry,
yeah,
I just want to put a news flash. We're talking about people who are already in a good communication set, Dr. Cole, that actually have financial transparency. But I know there's young farmers listening to this podcast who haven't even seen the books. So this is, yeah.
Yeah.
We're already at the stage saying, "Look, folks, if you don't even understand or see the balance sheets, you've gotta get to that step as well."
Exactly, and oftentimes grandma and grandpa, mom and dad are very tight knit. I've seen it, growing up in our family, and we were a German family, and
Mhm.
younger generation not to see the books, and
Mhm.
it's very, very important to have that transparency in there of what is the value, how were those assets valued, what is the income, and are we, hiding any income? Not
Yeah.
necessarily.
No, or not being totally honest about where all the income is or coming from.
Exactly, and so that assessment, Elaine, is very, very important, and if the folks aren't willing and the grandfolks aren't willing to do it, you're probably going to have you're gonna have some issues and problems. I'm being very candid up front, and I hope older generations listen to this podcast out here because what I find is in transition management, if you take the older generation's wisdom, younger generation's energy and new ideas, you can put one in one and make it three. However, transition management, it can be regenerative or it can be destructive.
Mhm.
One of the things that makes it very destructive is no transparency in the financials, Elaine. And what I find is it's a split in the road. And one of the things that'll destroy a farm legacy will be the whole aspect of non-transparency.
And do you think, Dr. Cole, that that comes from a spirit of fear from the founders? Like you just talked about your transition in your own dairy and letting go of control is hard, but isn't letting control go of control a lot easier when you have outside advisors saying this plan is a good plan, you've got your numbers working, your capital projections. I remember years ago you talking about working capital and say, when we have $7 corn, don't go out and buy all new equipment.
Yeah.
Like, make some reserves in your bank of the bank of the farm, so to speak, to be able to navigate what could come up in the next 2 to 3 years, like you say.
Well, it's the whole idea on the financials. It gets distorted because we'll spend a dollar to save 20 cents on taxes, but
Oh.
then obligate ourselves either debt wise or pulling off our working capital reserves for a 5-year period.
Right.
And
So you talk about debt servicing. So can you also that's another thing I think in terms of after you've looked at the books and seen the financial transparency there, how do young farmers have wisdom about servicing debt, David?
well, I think one of the things is, well, first of all, it's very important to bring in your lender. uh, And I really look for relationship type of lenders that not only know the numbers, but have kind of a feel of
The
the
history.
industry and also your personal situation. And I think there's a few things that you really need to zero in on, particularly for the younger generations buying out the older generation. You're going to look at the thing called repayment ability. And this is where the younger generation is going to have to do a cash flow, and I'll hear this, Elaine, all the time. Well, I'm a cow-calf operator. I don't need to do a quarterly cash flow or a monthly cash flow. Oh, yes, you do, because you've got expenses throughout the year, and 80% of that business plan is a cash flow plan. And what is your operational plan? In other words, your production
Yes.
schedules, et cetera, to back up that cash flow. And most of your lenders, and if you are borrowing money, not borrowing from the bank of mom and dad. And by the way, I'm a big believer of borrowing from the institutional lender because you got to be accountable to someone else, not the bank of mom and dad. They're going to say, hey, do you have the necessary coverage ratio? And it's basically to your repayment ability, to your annual debt payments or quarterly debt payments. And they're going to look at 125 to 150% ratio.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I think that that's a good place to also land to in this conversation is the tiers that I saw in Iowa were also in Iowa, apparently, the tax laws are such, Dr. Cole, that grandma does hang on to the land till death. And you're familiar with Dick Whitman and
yeah,
consulting work.
yeah.
And Dick has a seminar called Pay the Tax. To have more control, right? But the other sadness, I think, for young farmers listening to this is they will not likely ever be able to buy out or afford to buy land. So what are they able? What assets do you coach them around building some equity with?
Well, I think sometimes what we see successful, they'll buy the equipment or they'll buy the machinery and the equipment and do kind of what I call an apprenticeship.
Right.
Uh,
Okay.
to and then rent, the farmland with the option to buy. And this gives them a, 3, 5 year window in there to see, kind of
Well,
do
they
it.
can manage.
Yep,
Mhm.
and do a test run. And here's what happens. It allows that older generation to kind of give up that control. And my advice to the older generation is if you want to keep control, you got to give up control. I hope that's a quote.
Yeah, we'll do a mic drop on that one.
Yeah, because again, it's tough, but once you start giving up some of that control, the machinery and equipment, some of that livestock, and then get that you know paid for, and then start moving into the land assets. And one of the things, Elaine, I'm going to be candid. It's very, very difficult to buy land at the prices we have today, at the commodity prices that we have today. And so this allows you to build up some of that equity. And then in your late 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, that's the power zone of buying land. You've seen it in your generation, my generation. Sometimes we want to do it when we're in our 20s and 30s. Uh, and one of the things is when you're buying land, it's for the decades.
Yes, it's
Not
long term.
unless you're flipping it, which most farmers are not, and ranchers aren't flipping it. And so it's a decade-long commitment. And, we found an old truism down here in the United States, and it works in Canada. We find that about 80% of the time, farmland either maintains its value or increases in value. And so
Yes.
sometimes you have to kind of look at the longer term and the capital appreciation out there. So those would be some of the elements. And then building up that strength with your lender and building up that confidence is very, very important.
Well, and also that the lender knows the history of the character of the people involved in the farm and knows that they're good people. I just finished reading The Farmer's Lawyer by Sarah Vogel, who went with the North Dakota Nine against the US government. And it was Coleman versus Block, I think. And very interesting because these are really good people whose loans were being accelerated, and it was so unfair. And I was a farm debt mediator too in the 80s, and you and I remember those days.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the other thing, and I think one of the other points that you had from the conference, David, was make sure it says here that you have independent and written goals of each generation because the next generation may want to be doing something totally different than the founders.
And do you know what I really like to do? And of course, I've worked with you, Dr. Don Jonovic, who did transition planning. I worked with him. One of the things that we would do, we'd go in and interview every one of the family members, but we'd also have them write down their goals, both short term, long term, and in their goals, the business, family, and personal. And I put in mental, physical, and spiritual too. And, some people go, oh, that's soft, but it's the soft stuff that's very, very important. And that goal setting, you know what it does? What you will do, each generation or each individual will have, specific goals. And what you try to do is find some of the commonalities and then kind of work out, some of the differences. And if you don't have those goals and have that compass, it's kind of like the environment we have today. I tell people,
Yes.
focus on the goals. Who knows what is going to happen out of our White House or around the world? And society and even in transition management, it's designed to get you distracted.
Well,
And
anxiety and overwhelm is not helpful.
exactly. And what will happen is we will have those goals in writing and and find those commonalities, work out the differences, kind of like working on a wet hole. You just don't, go right into it. And one of the things is, it's a transformative process. And what we used to do, uh, you're gonna have to I highly recommend a consultant or a facilitator because
Right.
they'll set the agenda, they will keep minutes of the meeting, and they will keep you on task and work with our
And
curriculum.
keep it safe and respectful.
No,
That is a bit of a problem.
no, exactly. And what they will do, that facilitator will keep you out of what I call swamp issues because people will go back to their childhood.
Yeah, or
And
bring up old history.
oh, all the time, and what, we, tend to do is, "Okay, those are swamp issues, we've covered those, we aren't gonna go back there," and, because you always get what I call energy vampires.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
well,
the energy out of everybody.
what'll happen is they'll go back there, it'll distort that meeting, so if you have those goals, that's that compass, it's that North Star. uh, that keeps you focused. And that is a very, very critical type of an element. And again, have them in writing. And that is one of the major, major steps. And if you think about this, 80% of people have no goals, 16% have goals and keep them up here in the mind. Only 4% write them down. So,
I think the Harvard study followed a bunch of those folks,
you,
didn't it?
and the thing is, Elaine, that is a basic that's overlooked that is so
It's very
powerful.
easy and very cheap to do. It takes just
Exactly.
time and attention.
And it was funny at our alumni meeting here at Virginia
Mhm.
Tech. A couple of the students mentioned, our former students mentioned, boy, the power of goal setting. You used to discuss that in your classes. We still use it today. And
That's
so,
awesome.
Elaine, if you really want to get it jump started, get it, have the goals, but have that third party facilitator to keep people on track and go back and reinforce those goals every meeting. Because we're moving more and more to that.
Closer to the targets.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And the other thing too, I think from a lot of people now to Dr. Kohl are really involved in neuroscience and the power of the brain. And I'm holding a pen in my hand because as we're speaking, I'm just jotting down
Mhm.
your sound bites here. And the energy vampires, that's the whole thing that I call distracted management. So in our farm family coach group of coaches, we're very clear about helping people get better skilled at communicating and better skilled at seeing conflict resolution as a good thing if it's positive conflict behavior. So another thing that you have that you talked about here too was skill assessment. So I'm having conflict in farm families where someone's coming back to the farm who's really not skilled, but just is coming back as kind of a default mechanism. And the language we use is, where is it written that every child in this family has a right to farm? So how do you use the financial decision making how do you do this skill assessment of existing and new members? Like what's important there for young farmers to understand? Because I'm always encouraging young farmers to say, if you are coming back to the farm, what do you want your jobs and roles to be? But also, what's your business plan? Because I like to see a young farmer, like you say, be an apprentice with their own enterprise under the big umbrella of the bigger farm to prove their management skills, to have their own learning and also to have their own independence and pride of building something that's actually theirs.
I say amen to that. And we're starting to see more and more farm and ranch in transition doing that exact same thing. And sometimes those enterprises are outside the box.
Like
Yeah.
like a meat company or like a glass bottled
Yeah.
milk company, right?
And what you'll find is all of a sudden the older generation goes, "Oh, that's not a bad idea."
Yeah.
And and
Finally.
so being able to develop what I call those mini business plans and, being able to go through and develop the cash flow and the operational plan. And sometimes you, again, on that separate enterprise out there, Elaine, you actually go to the lender and borrow the money and show that you're accountable to someone else. I got to tell you, one of the critical things, and you talk about it, is to do the personality assessments. Of course, I use DISC all the time.
And we use PSIs.
Yeah, and they're great because you gotta decide, are you dealing with a dominant or are you dealing with a high analytical, and how you approach individuals. Actually, you'll get some humor out of the families because what they'll start saying is, "Oh, that's the D coming out," or that's the C, the analytical. So doing those personality assessments is critical. Now, I want to draw on something for the people viewing this podcast. I just attended Warren Buffett's deal again. And
Oh, nice.
yeah, let's put it this way. I spend 3 days there, and it's very regenerative. But one of the things 94-year-old Warren Buffett said, and I was there for his announcement as he decided to step down as CEO. He
Oh.
said, "Success in business is your behavioral acronym."
Ah.
He said that that will separate you from other people. And he basically says, whether it's investing or transition management, managing your business, trying to take the emotion and control the emotion and
Emotional intelligence, we might
Yep.
also call that.
to be what I call as objective as possible going through. And when Warren Buffett, who has accumulated $1 trillion
Yes.
in net worth, when he said that, you're spot on. So those personality assessments, but also trying to develop what I call the 6C. Oftentimes, when lenders will look at your credit, they'll look at cash flow, character, collateral, right on down through. But I think the 6C is the most important. That's called the cranium.
Oh, so that
Right
kind
up
of,
here.
yeah.
And it's the ability to plan, execute, and monitor. I call it REM.
Yeah.
stuff. And what this will do is for our young folks, but even to the older generation, being able to follow that, respond, execute, and monitor. That's that behavioral acumen that Warren Buffett was talking about. That's real critical. That will keep you focused, keep you you know, uh, on that North
Right.
Star as you're
Right.
moving forward.
And a shorter version of that I say a lot is focus and execute. Focus and execute. And I think you talked about anxiety and overwhelm and the uncertain times that we're currently in this era that we're in right now. And farm families are, when they come to me, Dr. Kohl, they say, Elaine, we don't know how to start. We're anxious and we're overwhelmed. And so they just keep their heads down and keep doing the operational side, but they're not using their cranium, as you say, to do the planning and executing of a plan because they don't even see a place to start. Another thing that you had in this your list here of rules for business transition and growth was living arrangements of each generation. So I'm coming to you from my father-in-law's pastoral office that was in the farmhouse. This farmhouse was built in 1960. My husband's lived here since he was 3 years old, with a few interims of going to college and being away for a few years. But I always thought that I was going to move when our son came back to farm. And my daughter-in-law came up to me and she said, Mom, I want to break your half-mile rule. I go, oh, tell me more. I don't like your house. Oh, okay. So our plan, our coach said, well, Elaine, you and Wes will be moving in 2020. Well, you know what happened in 2020. So that didn't happen. But before 2020, my daughter-in-law said, we would like to build a new house. And their new house is just across the shelter belt, Dr. Cole. So that is breaking my half-mile rule because it's only 159 steps from my back step. Which is lovely because I have 3 grandchildren that can call me on the two-way. They call me on the FM radio, say, hey, Grandma, can we come over? And it's delightful and it's a treasure and it's a gift to have them so close. And thankfully, we do good conflict resolution because I wrote the book on in-law factor. So one of your things is, what are the plans for living arrangements and who pays for the housing?
And no, exactly. And
And how much is this house going to cost? I'm just curious. How much is this house going to cost?
oh yeah. Hey, sometimes we focus in on the business and all those budgets, but we also have to look at family living and lifestyle. Yeah, one of the things that's really hindering many farm family businesses is too many generations living out of the business. Grandpa and grandma, mom and
Yeah.
dad, junior and junior, and the kid that comes home and lives in the basement. That never happens up in Canada.
Oh, come on. I tease them all
Oh,
the
I,
time.
I,
And they say, Elaine, we're saving so much money by living in our
yeah.
mother's basement.
But having clarity on the family living budgets is so critical. And then uh, where are mom and dad going to live, or the younger generation going to live, and having that clarity, that is going to be that will probably be 2 or 3 meetings in itself,
Yeah,
just
I agree.
spelling that out. And this is where a good quicken program on family living budget, and here's one of the things that's going to have to be discussed, is oftentimes grandma, grandpa, mom, and dad don't want to give up their farm business ownership because they got to give up the perks.
Well, and the perks can be anywhere from 14 to 20,000 according to Dick Whitman's
Yeah,
compensation tree.
Dick's exactly right. Matter of fact, some of my research found that 28% of family living costs are commingled in the farm business costs. The cell phones, the gator,
Yeah.
the,
The truck,
yep, and
the fuel that goes in the truck. Oh, did I
exactly.
mention the fuel that goes in the non-farm kids' vehicles?
No, exactly. And so having some of that clarity, this is where those little things can just be energy vampires and
Yeah.
just destroy the whole thing. So clarity on the family living cost, and often tell younger generation, grandpa, grandma, mom, and dad are $1 million annuity. In other words, until they're out to, their death, oftentimes it takes about $1 million.
Yeah.
Depending on
And
lives.
the other thing is you also talked about, um, I remember one time at a conference you said the number you use for family living is whatever the price of a new Corvette is. Say
Yeah,
the price
yeah,
of a new Corvette in 2025.
I know, and it's real expensive. And you know what, Elaine? People in both sides of the border, and even Australian brought it up the other day.
Oh, yeah.
They remember my Corvette rule back in 1967. A Corvette would cost about 4,500, and family living was $4,000. Put that in perspective today, but you're
Yeah.
bringing in a new family member. You're bringing in a new Corvette. It's
Yeah, and Farm Credit Services, who you and I have worked with many times, has a webinar called Two Economists and a Lender, and I encourage listeners to go back and find that on YouTube, because they say family living expenses and keeping track or even getting some indication of that should be a top right drawer event. But for many people, they don't have a hot clue that $95,000 or $110,000 is going out the door just for groceries, family living, hockey, charity of some kind, hopefully some kinds of personal savings and investments. And I guess just as we sort of wrap things up here, because we could speak for hours and hours, you and I, because we're passionate about farm families doing well and being economically strong and healthy. You also at this conference had a sweet 16 golden rules of transition management. And so possibly I can get that put into a checklist and put it in the show notes. But if you just had three things, Dr. Kohl, to leave with young farmers. You've talked about a neutral valuation of the assets. You talked about, are you profitable? Because do you want to work for a farm that's been unprofitable for 20 years or 10 years? And yes, there are hard times, and that's a real legacy issue too, because it's a sadness for farmers to want to go back to the family farm and then realize, first of all, it's not profitable, or secondly, there is no room for them. And you also mentioned now that I think maybe before we came on record, is that you're also seeing all of these founders who don't have a successor. That's where we also would coach people to look in your neighborhood at the bachelor farmers or the farmers without successors, that you can go into a non-related joint venture, which would be fantastic. So what things give you hope for the future of agriculture for young farmers, that things that they can do to make things go the way they hoped?
Well, I think let's just summarize 5 points.
Okay.
And because we've talked and it's kind of overwhelming.
Yeah.
First of all, I think it's very important to start out with the goal setting. All right. and business, family, personal, mental, physical, and spiritual.
Mhm.
That is so critical. Whether it's a non-farm family member or farm family member, um, I think it's very important to do the resource assessment. Please, I
Know what you're getting into?
yep, and I would encourage a third-party evaluator. Oh, grandpa and grandma, mom and dad are not gonna like it,
No.
but that is something, that is very critical. You know what the third element is, and depending on, what they're going to how they're gonna come back, is to do, a cash flow because it's 80% of a business plan, Elaine, and if you
Pretty
think about
important.
it, um, I highly recommend a monthly or quarterly cash flow because you gotta think through production, you gotta think through cost, you gotta think through marketing. It makes you think of all the operational components of that business. Now, to young farmers and ranchers out here, hopefully you know spreadsheets. If you don't, find somebody that
Learn how to get really good at spreadsheets, man.
you best believe it. And the thing is, a lot of farmers and ranchers will throw up their hands and say, with this economic environment, we can't do it. That's where you do sensitivity analysis. In our creamery, one of the things that we'll do is do the best, average, and worst case scenario. But I got challenged, Elaine.
Okay.
The younger owner said, "I don't like the best case scenario. We're gonna do the best of the best." And of course, old grumpy old me and the older owners said, "Oh, you can't do it." Believe it or not,
They proved you wrong?
we've been doing that for 36 months.
Oh, wow.
31 of the 36 months, the younger generation proved us wrong, but the 5 months, boy, we said, "We told you so." No.
So
But
best of the best, that's really awesome because that's shooting for higher than best.
exactly, exactly, and believe it or not, um, they do Dr. Danny Kleinfelder at Texas
Yes.
A&M talked about this. They do the 5% rule. Try to be
Yes.
5% better in production, operational efficiency, finance, marketing and risk management, and human resource management. So that'll get you to the best of the best. So that cash flow, very critical. Can I tell you another one I think is important? Get a team of advisors.
Mhm.
And I'm very, very serious because they'll keep you on track. And sometimes that's your lender, it's your financial consultant. Like, we've played that role. Sometimes there'll be a crop or a livestock consultant. And periodically you have meetings because they're kind of those assistant coaches, those
Yes.
sounding boards, but they also keep you on track. And then the final thing is, I'll take you way up, but I think you have to kinda say, "What's my higher purpose, my core
Mhm.
values?"
Mhm.
And, in that, sometimes what you have to do is assess the community that you're going back into, the culture of that community.
Yes, I agree.
Will your spouse or potential spouse be comfortable in that area? You have to kind of go through some of that deep type of assessment that a lot of people fail to do.
Oh, I just wanna go back to the farm. I don't care. I grew up here. It's fine.
Yeah,
Fine for you, buddy, but maybe not so much for the other people.
no, exactly. And I picked this up doing work up in Canada, particularly in your provinces up there. Sometimes people will live in town, commute out to the farm
Yes. Yeah.
because then they have that community in the town. And
Mhm.
that type of assessment is very, very
Well, and that's your mental health goals. That's when you said, what are your mental health is not to be in isolation and to be connected and to be doing things that give my life meaning and purpose and fill my joy bucket, right? And
Elaine, in that final fifth thing that I just give, it's called regenerative. We talk about
Mhm.
regenerative practices in agriculture. Well, you got to have regenerative practices to keep that behavioral thing
Mhm.
acumen that Warren Buffett was talking about, and that's that physical health. Taking a walk, and that's getting off your technology and kinda hearing the silence. And so, again, that 5th assessment, is all relates to attitude. And the thing is, you aren't gonna accomplish the first 4 if you don't have that attitude and behavioral mindset. So right there is the 5 big things, and I'll have to say, anybody listening to this podcast, don't let it be overwhelming. Take one at a time. And I see a lot of opportunity for young farmers and ranchers because one of the things is they will tend to come with that business
Yes,
mindset,
exactly.
the balance type of mindset. And volatility, we have extreme volatility out here. It creates
Mhm.
opportunity because if people will focus, one of the things is other people will go by the wayside if you maintain that focus. And you say this, and I say, we're not in here to save your business. We're in here to transform your business.
That's
I,
awesome. And our group says we're also here to help you have harmony through understanding.
yeah,
And if you understand the financial wisdom that you've poured out for our audience today, David, thank you very much because you have a long history of helping and serving farm families, and it's delightful to see you walking the talk and doing your own succession planning.
yeah,
And
few gray hairs.
yeah, well, I'm getting them on top, not so
Uh,
much in the bottom.
eh,
But thank you so much for your time today. And when this podcast comes out, we'll share it far and wide. And we're also really glad to see you still traveling and still having those face-to-face conversations with young farmers.
Well, Elaine, I want to thank you for everything that you've done to forward the industry over the years, and you've been a real champion. And appreciate everything that you have done. And I just want to leave one final message. I'm a firm believer of North American strong,
Yes.
Canada, Mexico, and the United States. And to anybody that's listened to this podcast, there's many people that think that way. So. Uh, Let's put it this way, you put us together, we're 5%.
Better together.
Yep, we're 5% of the world population, but 29% of the world economy.
Mhm.
And this too will pass, and
Mhm.
I'm a big believer of North American strong.
Yeah, well, we thank you for that. So bye for now. And folks, just share this podcast with your grandma, your grandpa, your brothers and sisters, and people that you know need a leg up and a lift of just using your cranium and the kind of mindset and thinking that you, Dr. Cole, have been really in transforming and doing a lot of regenerative ag. Before regenerative ag, it was a buzzword like it is now.
Mhm.
So thanks so much for your time and blessings to your family and all the best with your transitions too.
To
Bye for
you.
now. Thank you. And bye for now, folks.